Good morning, friends. Hello, hello. Welcome this morning. Hope you're doing great and that this day treats you well. Have a little mug up this morning. Well, I got to see a dear friend of mine who I greatly love. Ariel Castillo, he's an Army chaplain. He and I were in Iraq together, but at that time he was my chaplain assistant, and he came to worship on Sunday, and we got to go to lunch, and it was a great opportunity to reconnect. Haven't seen him in a while. He's actually up in Boston at BU doing an ethics course up there. So he's getting smart and doing great things, and it's a wonder and a beauty to be able to connect with him. I'm so thankful for it. So it is yeah. So today we'll get the chaplaincy mug out to think about Ariel. So yeah. So good morning, Yvette. Hey, Jamie. Good morning to you. Hope you're doing great. Staying dry. It is a rainy day here in the city. But there is goodness in it. We sorely need the rain, and so I hope you're enjoying it. Hey, Marianne, good morning to you. Hope you're doing great. Good morning. You're on time. Oh, you're never late, Jamie Battles. All right. You're always on time, kind of like a wizard. Wizards are never early or late. They always arrive at exactly the hour in which they are meant to arrive. All right, friends. Good morning to you. It is the 24th day of September on this 11/11. I hope you're doing great, and I hope that goodness and beauty are with you. Today is the more liturgical traditions of which we are elbow to elbow with. Have what are called feast days, or saints of the day, and every once in a while it's kind of fun to look at like who the saint of the day is, and I'll do this every once in a while. The Roman Catholics have Butler's Book of Saints, which lists the saints for every day, and then in the Orthodox tradition they also have their saints, and again, for our tradition, when we address the saints, we're talking about all of us. There's not an underlining of the certain graces in which you manage to pull off in the course of a lifetime that makes you a saint. It is really simply this journey through this pilgrimage of life, and this humble and most basic desire to follow this Jesus guy. And but I do love listening and noting these stories. And today's saint is a guy by the name of Saint Silouan the Athonite. It's a great handle, isn't it? But Saint Silouan has this. He had this. There's usually this pithy little thing about what they say, and there's this quote that he was known for saying. And the quote is this: "Praying for people means shedding blood. Praying for people means shedding blood." It struck me for a second because, I've spent time in the Army chaplaincy, kind of with people to the left and right of me who are in the business of shedding blood. I got to see my friend Al Castillo, who's an Army chaplain right now. I continue to be friends with my warrior friends. We have an art exhibit to attend their hearts that are coming up that Brian Fox has in the town. I'll post more about that in the future. It's on the 18th of October. I hope you can make it and build it into your day. It's going to be fantastic. In the images he's created to bring to life the sacrifices and the difficulties of war. And so when you read Saint Silouan, to say, this guy who's the saint of the day, say to praying for people means shedding blood. there's this. I find it, it kind of took me a little bit for a moment, but I also found it incredibly beautiful. One of my mentors, Len Sweet, wrote a book on preaching, and his preaching book was called Giving Blood. And these images of whether it is Saint Silouan saying that it is ours to, that praying means shedding blood. Praying for someone means shedding blood. Praying for people means shedding blood. Or the act of preaching means giving blood, is really about this notion of where we put our life and where we put our energies into the course of our days. Because prayer isn't about whacking somebody over the head and making sure they behave in the manner in which we would ascribe them to, but that it is about this our deep willingness to enter into that kind of sacrificial relationship, to have compassion, particularly for the people that maybe we don't feel compassion for. That we don't immediately have a warm chocolatey feeling in our heart. That when we say giving blood, it's not just that we're going to give them energy, but that we're actually going to hold and sustain our own suffering and our own difficulty, our own willingness and desire to pray for those who so desperately need it. I used to be asked a lot when I was an Army chaplain about, how could you go forward with warriors onto the battlefield who are going to break one of God's commandments. That's why they showed up. That's why they got dressed up. That's why they got all their weapons out. They're going to go break a commandment. Now we can argue about like murder isn't killing, blah blah blah. It's violence breaks shalom. So, I reject it. But my supposition was always this, and this came from a senior chaplain, and it's only become more true in my life. And not just for warriors on the battlefield, but for all of us who are fighting a great struggle, which is each and every one of us every day. And it's this: who more needs the grace of God and the prayers for the grace of God than those who have been called and set out to break one of God's commandments? Who needs grace more? Who needs a line in which to link them to the divine and to the holy and to the good and the true and the beautiful, to remind them in the midst of brokenness and horror? And friends, this is true for us all. I'm just talking about the warrior's path right now, but we all are in this place where we're fighting the great struggle, and we are all in this place where we've set out at one day or another, one moment or another, to break one of God's commandments. And again, that doesn't make us bad people, it makes us people, but it does mean we so desperately need to shed blood, to be willing to offer this self-sacrificial desire and care and sympathy for the love for others, and that we can let that pour out of us, to suspend our own judgment and to spend our own desire for the righteous to be as it should be, because it's our own righteousness often that will get us into trouble. It's nothing will derail like your fitness plan. Like, okay, I'm going to work out, then perfection. Wow, you didn't do all the reps today. Wow, your time was off today. Like, that to have a bad day of training in a perfectionist mindset, it will undermine everything. Rather than that no matter where we find ourselves and no matter what we do, we'll constantly, if we can only anchor ourselves in the righteousness and in our self-righteousness versus our willingness to shed blood, our willingness in prayer to truly empty out our hearts for the people that we might pray for, and then we might pray for those whom maybe we find it hard to pray for. And this is really what Saint Silouan was all about throughout his life. There's this famous story of this where he was kind of an ascetic. He was off living in a hermitage, and he met another guy who was out living in a hermitage. So they're kind of comparing hermit notes, as one will do. And so he believed. And so he met this other hermit who were, they lived around the turn of the 20th century. So atheism was actually a big deal then. There were lots of atheists running around. I know you might not think atheism is kind of a modern advent. It's not. That even in the beginning of the 20th century, it was a big there was a big hullabaloo about how God doesn't exist, yada yada yada. So there were all these atheists running around in which these hermits would encounter in the course of their days. And this one hermit would joyfully believed how these atheists were going to burn in hell. Like he knew they would be punished for their disobedience of God, for their disobedience of not giving proper sacrifice to the divine. But Saint Silouan, having met this guy, he just kind of almost doubled over in pain. He actually physically responded to when he heard him speak of it. He says, "Tell me, supposing you went to paradise and you looked down and saw somebody burning in hell, would you feel happy?" And the hermit replied to him that he said, "Well, it can't be helped." And Silouan answers, "Love could not bear that. We must pray for all." And his heart ached so much for the world that he would often pray, and he would often weep and cry for the people that he prayed for. And this is so. And I'm not saying we need to be Saint Silouan, but this invitation to to shed blood, to let go of a little bit of our righteousness of our days, whether it's our strict draconian righteousness over our own selves and our own way we're supposed to be, or whether it's our draconian selves over the world and saying that it needs to be this way and we just can't wait for those folks to burn in hell, those things, but that we might actually sacrifice our own being. We might sacrifice our own heart, sacrifice our own love, sacrifice our own desires for the way we think the world's supposed to be, for the way the world is, so that the grace of God and the Spirit of God may come to reign in it. So that grace upon grace may actually find its life and its love amongst its people. Because if it's going to show up, friends, it's going to come through you, and it's going to come through me. If God's grace is going to arrive, it's going to be arrived because we're willing to receive it, and we're willing to offer it out to those whom we'll encounter in the course of our days. So, friends, on this day of the feast day of Saint Silouan, whatever that all means, it is my hope that you will extend a little grace, that you'll shed a little blood, that you'll let go of these messages of a world that would have us divided and have us hating others, that to let go of our own righteousness and self-righteousness of the way in which we would have the world be, and simply pray for those who are hurting, pray for those who are broken, pray for our own hurting and lost and selfish parts, and that in it we may let God's love, we may let God's grace do its work by shedding blood in prayer. All right, peace and grace to you, my friends. We'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.